Welcome to this CarGurus UK review of the new BMW M135 hot hatch. Now, from the side, I think this is a fairly generic body style. It could easily be a Mercedes A-Class, a Ford Focus, even an old Volvo V40 for that matter. And much the same could be said, of course, of the previous version of the BMW 1 Series, because actually, although this is called the new 1 Series, it's actually just an upgrade of the older version. It does, however, have some useful changes for this M135. So there's a smarter interior, there's a new gearbox. So in this review, we're going to get stuck in and see what it's all about. As a reminder, the M135 sits at the top of the 1 Series range and is designed to take on hot hatches like the Mercedes-AMG A35 and Audi S3 while offering a more premium alternative to the likes of the Volkswagen Golf R. Another change for this new version of the M135 is that it has dropped the I from the names. It's not the M135i, which stood for fuel injection, it's the M135. Now that is not because BMW has found a way to make 2-litre petrol engine without fuel injection. It's because I at BMW now stands for electric cars, and it didn't want to confuse buyers. So it took the I away from here because I, remember, stands for electric. Right, you keeping up? Right. The other thing to point out here, this badge. Can't help but notice that the M1 bit now is bigger than the 35 bit. It's like, I drive a BMW M1 35. Under the M135's bonnet is the same 2-litre turbocharged petrol engine, complete with fuel injection, as before, albeit now producing 296 horsepower, which is a 6 horsepower drop over the old M135i. As before, it uses BMW's xDrive all-wheel drive system to send power to all 4 wheels. It can sprint from 0 to 62 in just 4.9 seconds and has a top speed of 155 miles per hour. In terms of styling updates versus the previous M135, we have smart new headlights, aggressive bumper at the front, and quad exhaust. I quite like these, they look good, don't they? In terms of practicality, meanwhile, you get a 380-litre boot in this car, which is pretty standard for a family car of this size. And this quite nifty floor here, so you can lift it up. There's a lot of storage under the floor, and you can even pop that back there, so it's out of the way. Do note that while this car does get split folding rear seats, they're not standard. It's £175 to have those as an optional extra, which seems very stingy on BMW's part. This powered tailgate is £380 to add, and if you like this frozen grey paintwork, and I could see why you would, well, that's another £2,100. Space in the back is, well, it's okay. I do fit behind myself, so I'm 5'11". You can see they've kind of sculpted out the back of these seats here to give you a bit of knee room, and I'm glad they have, because otherwise I don't think I would fit. My feet do go under the seat in front. It's a little bit tight, to be honest. And this middle seat is very narrow, and you've got the big transmission tunnel as well, so it is going to be tight for 3 people. Can bring this down as an armrest with a couple of cup holders, so that's good. Headroom's all right. We've got the panoramic sunroof in here, again, optional extra, but headroom's fine. And these rear windows are also a little bit small, so it does make it feel a slightly claustrophobic back here. But you do get air vents, you do get USB-C chargers. Yeah, it's not the roomiest family car by any means, but it's not terrible. Up front though, it's a different story. It's really smart up here. So this interior is one of the big changes versus the previous M135i and 1 Series. All versions of the M135 come with sport seats as standard. This one actually has upgraded M Sport seats, so you get a little illuminated logo here. And they are very comfortable, very sportive. It should be said they are part of an upgrade pack that also includes upgraded brakes with red calipers, some upgraded trim, and these fancy M Sport seat belts here with stitching. But that's £2,075. And then these have also got the electric seat adjustment, which is another £730. Like I say though, very comfortable. I mean, you'd hope they would be for the price. and the driving position, as you would expect from a BMW, is spot on, really adjustable, and also you can get nice and low, which is good in a hot hatch like this. In fact, overall this interior is a real highlight of the updated M135. It feels really quite special, more so than a Golf R or Audi S3, with a smart design and fantastic material quality. As far as practicality goes, storage is okay in the 1 Series, so you've got a reasonable sized glove box there, a couple of bottle holders here, wireless phone charging pad, and a bit more storage under here, plus a bin under the armrest, and then a bottle holder and a bit more storage in the door bin here. You do get ambient lighting in this M135. It looks really smart. It comes on across here. In fact, let's bring it on. There you go. Look, it comes on across here and also on these pads above the heaters here. The only thing with this is these at night time reflect really badly in the door mirrors. It's really quite distracting, which is annoying, I would say. I also think that the loss of the iDrive controller here for the infotainment is a bit of a backward step, ergonomically speaking, because now everything has to be done through the screen, including the heating controls. In terms of screens, this is a 10.7-inch display for the infotainment, and then this is 10.25-inch for the dials. Both screens sit under a single piece of curved glass. That looks great. It's also very responsive, but I do think it's a little bit convoluted to use with so many icons that you really have to get to know the system. What I do like is that BMW has made the driver assistance systems very easy to access. There's one button here, you press that and then brings up a menu where you can turn off your lane departure warning or your speed limit warning. And actually the speed limit warning, you can also just hold down the set button on the steering wheel and that will deactivate it, which can be handy on country lanes or around towns where it's not as reliable sometimes. So that's really good. The only thing here that I'm not so keen on is they put the driving modes down here, really out of your line of sight, which for something that in a hot hatch, you're probably going to be pressing to go from the regular personal mode, which is kind of like comfort, into the sporty mode. Yeah, I'd rather that was a bit easier to access. But other than that, ergonomically, yeah, I think it's pretty good, this 1 Series. So the engine in this car is the same 2 litre, as we mentioned, carried over from the old M135i, and therefore it has the same pros and cons. So on the cons front, it's not the most characterful engine ever to appear in a hot hatch. And certainly if you've driven the old M135i and M140i, the rear wheel drive ones with the 6-cylinder engines, this engine does not compare to those 6 cylinders in terms of character. But it is extremely efficient at deploying its power. So 300 horsepower in a small family car, remember 295 pound-foot of torque from 2000 RPM. This is rapid with a capital R. So I just put my foot down and in normal mode, there's a bit of a delay as the gearbox catches up and then the engine goes. So if you want to get around that, you can either put it in sport or as a shortcut, hold down this left-hand paddle for a couple of seconds and it puts it into boost for 10 seconds. And that gives you everything straight away. It's fast. You can also, in this car, put it in sport and then put it into manual, you can feel the benefits of one of the other changes here, which is that BMW has changed the old 8-speed torque converter to a 7-speed dual clutch gearbox. And that just means that the shifts, particularly in faster driving, are just a bit snappier, which really helps in a hot hatch. It's really a good fun car to drive, this. The drawback is that in very slow driving, like when parallel parking, this configuration of gearbox can cause the car to roll a little bit backwards before it goes forwards, or vice versa. This thing of the car rolling backwards and forwards a little bit in slow speed manoeuvres is quite often a characteristic of dual clutch gearboxes because it's just a little bit slack before they pick up and engage. And it's not helped in the M135 because actually at the top of the accelerator paddle, the very, very top of it, there's just a tiny dead spot. And then when it does pick up, because it's a responsive engine, the car can tend to sort of surge forward a little bit and you can end up jumping forwards out of a parking space. And as a driver, it can all make you look a little bit amateurish, I have to say, which probably isn't the image you were going for when you chose to buy a sporty BMW. On the ride and handling front, the M135 comes with what BMW calls M adaptive suspension, which uses clever frequency selective dampers that adapt to road conditions. While you can't manually adjust them through different driving modes, they do offer very good body control. You really can fling this M135 through corners and through roundabouts, and trust that it's just going to grip and go. The all-wheel drive system is incredibly effective, and that means you can carry huge cross-country pace. This is a very, very quick car from A to B, and that is all good fun. The one thing I would say is that you do kind of have to accept that the fun from this car mainly comes from the speed it can carry rather than the communication that it gives back to you. So the steering, for example, is nice and sharp, but it doesn't really have any feel through the steering wheel rim, partly probably because it's so chunky, this thing. It's got one of these really big fat BMW steering wheel rims. And also, while the chassis, you can again make it move around a little bit in corners, it doesn't communicate much back to you. I would also point out that the ride in this car is firm. It does bounce about a bit, but personally, I'm okay with that. This is a hot hatch. I do expect, you know, it's going to have a firmer ride, and actually in some ways that's quite good because it does remind you that you're driving something a bit special. If you want even more focus, BMW offers an M Dynamic package that brings revised suspension hardware, increased body bracing, lightweight wheels and upgraded brakes borrowed from the M3 and M4, but we are yet to try this. Now, given this car is already £43,000 before you add any optional extras, you might want to think carefully about ticking those options boxes. Now, don't get me wrong, £43,000 I think actually sounds like quite good value for an M135. It makes it more affordable to buy than its key rivals. However, it doesn't include as standard things like power folding door mirrors or adaptive cruise control. So you are going to end up ticking some options boxes. This car, for example, while an extreme example because it is a press car, but it has £12,000 worth of optional extras on it. So this M135, definitely a useful upgrade over its predecessor. That new gearbox does give it a bit more urgency. It's just more usable, more capable than ever. It's a good car. I can see why people are going to like this. What it is not is one of the truly great BMW performance cars, and if you're after just the best hot hatch possible for this kind of price, then I'd point you in the direction of a Honda Civic Type R instead. But what do you think though? Would you choose an M135 over one of its rivals? Let us know in the comments, and remember to head to cargurus.co.uk when it comes time to finding your next car.